Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Zach Meckler.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name's Joe Kuzma. Joining me today, once again, we like to call him around these parts the Professor, and I don't know if it annoys him or not, but also Coach Zach Meckler. And I always, sometimes I say you're standing in here for Brian. And, a lot of people get used to just Brian. But, again, it's like the 1A, 1B, 1C. Because sometimes I'm not on here. So it's like, it's almost like the Bermuda Triangle or we need something like three amigos or something like that. But welcome back, Zach. How you doing, my friend?
Not too bad. Yeah, I think about this as me kind of just sitting in the in the wings waiting for my number to be called. And whenever you say, hey, I need you, I come on. And, even if I don't need to, I sometimes rear my ugly head otherwise. But, I enjoy it. So I'm always glad to be on here, Joe.
Put me in, Coach. Put me in.
Just I'm a coach now. I wish I could put the pads back on and play again,
Man, I was just, oh, my goodness. I was just watching something on TV, and it was like it was an older guy. Oh, you know what it was? A&E has been doing these pro wrestling bios, and then they also have this thing where WWE is trying to find like lost artifacts for the Vault. And long story short, they just did one with Sergeant Slaughter and the Iron Sheik, which kind of even predates me. I mean, that was going on in like 1983. I was born in 81. And the Sarge, great guy. He was really young then. So, I mean, he's still kicking. He's still alive. And he said something about, he visits a former WWF champion that the Iron Sheik beat for the title way back late 70s, early 80s. I think it was Bob Backlund had the title for 6 years. Just a little background for my non-pro wrestling friends. This was a guy headlining like the biggest arena in the world, Madison Square Garden. And if I had to guess, he's got to be like pushing 70 also. And I'm going to look it up here, but they show up at his place. He was working out. He's 71, okay? 72 in August, and he just got done saying he was playing flag football.
Good for him. Good for him. I would be at that point when I'm 71.
Oh, he was like a crazy, a collegiate athlete and stuff too. In fact, I wanted to say he may have won an NCAA title somewhere. He went to North Dakota State, so that's something that's, as you know, very near and dear to my heart. I'm like the FCS guy. You're like the D3 guy. We kind of encompass all of it here. But anyways, I wasn't going to get into the random rambling and banter and stuff, but that just popped in my brain. I was like, you said put the pads back on. I was like, man, there was somebody that had no business. You would never think. 71 years old. It's like, man, I'm 39 and I get out of bed and I'm
knees and hips hurt.
Yeah, I know. It's just, I'm like, and I'm nowhere near that yet. You know what I mean? A lot of people be like, man, you're young, And of course, I'm like 30 some years younger than that. And I'm like, man, what's going to happen when I'm 71? But
yeah, God bless him.
Hey, he stays fit, He must take the fish oil and loosen the joints and stretch and everything every morning. I mean, good for him. So I don't know. I don't know how to segue from that, to be completely honest. I guess we got a long way to go. Not quite a 30-year span until everyone puts the pads back on. We're going to see a lot of. We had the rookie camp. We don't have anything to say about it. Neither of us were there. We could speculate on what everyone else says. We just know that there's a few people who are like, why are you always talking about Najee Harris? And it's like, well, he's the number one pick, overall. This is the guy to be most excited about. You see the football in his hands. Speaking of the thing we didn't cover between FCS and D3, there's Division II. Slippery Rock quarterback was there because they needed somebody to throw the rock around. So they invited him out there. They invited their quarterback out there as part of the rookie camp. I don't know that he turned any heads like Duck Hodges did when he was in a similar spot, and it's quite the loaded quarterback depth chart. But you got a lot of people who do talk about that quarterback depth chart, Zach, and they talk about Ben Roethlisberger. Oh, he's finished, he's through. There's so many different angles to take on this, and today, just because we're still kind of in the shadow of the NFL draft, which kind of rounds out everything from free agency, and you kind of get an idea of what these squads look like, I feel like the Steelers are the Rodney Dangerfield of the AFC North. It's every year, and Ben Roethlisberger too. They get no respect, right? Yep. Dr. Vinny Boombatz, and he goes and sees him. There's some type of problem with Ben Roethlisberger. He's got the bad elbow. He's got a bad knee. He can't move. He can't run. He's too old. This, that, and the other thing. And it's like, and somehow he continues to own everyone in the AFC North. All these young pups that are out there, all Heisman Trophy winners too, and I get tired of seeing it. So today we're asking the question. We're answering the question. We're actually not even going to ask. We're going to tell you who is the Steelers' biggest threat in the AFC North here in the 2021 season. We just start with the Ratbirds right off. I mean, it's not going to matter. And by this moment, anybody who's listening that's not a Steelers fan, it's just, I appreciate you. Continue, but just be known. Keep it clean in the comments. You're not going to like what we're going to say. We are not unbiased. We are very biased. We are homers for this. Okay, we try and be fair. We're not just going to criticize. We're not going to slander for the sake of sounding cool to get clicks and views and stuff like that. But at the same time, I feel besmirched by the way the media has been handling or covering the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason. Let's just start there right now, Zach. There's some things you've been hearing, too, that just seem like a little preposterous. Like these guys are, they're former football players in some cases, and they sound like worse than the Monday morning quarterbacks or the Yinzers, so we sometimes affectionately call them.
Yeah, we get it. Ben is old. They're losing. They're gonna have 3 new starters.
He's younger than me, though.
I know, that's the thing. So I guess you're old too, Joe. I'm sorry. They're gonna have 3 new stars on their offensive line. New offensive line coach, new offensive coordinator. We get that. You make those changes to improve. If the Steelers thought that they were going to be better off by keeping Alejandro Villanueva, and I think they would have kept them. If they thought they were going to be better off keeping Matt Filer, they would have kept them regardless of the financials. Kevin Colbert, and they've always figured it out, and they didn't. So the Steelers went, they drafted a center, they drafted a tackle. The center should start, Kendrick Green. The tackle, realistically, he's going to compete. I'd be surprised if he beat out Okorafor or Banner. The Steelers, whether the media doesn't like them or fans don't like them, the Steelers do like Okorafor and they do like Banner. They still think DeCastro can do it. They speak highly of Kendrick Green, and obviously Kevin Dotson, showed the glimpses of what he can be. Ben Roethlisberger, we've seen historically over the years that when he passes the ball less and the Steelers have a run game, they do very well offensively, and he can still go and get into a shootout when he needs to. It's just not doing it every week. And you would think that the big-time media, the national media, and all of their infinite wisdom would be able to understand the fact that, yeah, he's older, but if he's not throwing the ball 40 times, 50 times a game, keeps his arm fresh, they're sitting there saying, well, he gets tired by the end of the year. Yeah, he probably did when he's throwing the ball 50 times a week every single week and then practicing all week on top of that with no real bye week from, all the COVID nonsense that took place this past year. I'm not sitting there saying that he wouldn't have fallen off the wheels last year, but come on. The realistic person should be able to look at that situation and say, yeah, Ben is no longer the premier elite franchise long-term quarterback, but he's still the franchise quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers for the time being. And you want to be able to give him everything you can to support him. And whether you like the Steelers draft or not, you gave him a running back who is better than any running back the Steelers. I can definitively say on a talent basis, Najee Harris is a better running back than what the Steelers have had since Le'Veon Bell. That's no knock on James Conner. So they improved in that regard. They got Pat Freiermuth, who you now have 2 legitimate tight ends. I'm not going to sit there and say Freiermuth is going to be a high-impact rookie because we see rookie tight ends oftentimes kind of take a minute to get there. But he's not going to be forced in to be the starter role. That's going to be huge for him. And I'm going to tell you right now, he's going to be a better blocker than Ebron right out of the gate. If he gets blown up, he's still doing better than Ebron's done in the run game. So you're going to have 2
let me slide in there real quick, too. Even Vance Mcdonald is the guy you traded for and was kind of a starter. Ebron comes in as kind of the tight end 1. You're looking at Vance playing about 50-60% of snaps, so I wouldn't expect anything more than that out of Freiermuth.
No, especially not in year 1. That gets his feet wet, and you're looking at a guy as the tight end 1 realistically because he's a hell of a lot cheaper than Eric Ebron is in 2022. So you gave Ben more targets. You retained Juju. The receiver room is identical. If they fix the drops, that room has a ton of talent. Chase Claypool taking steps and Deontay Johnson taking steps, and can't forget about James Washington. And if Kendrick Green is as advertised, he should be, I don't envision a situation where he's any worse than what we saw from Marquise Pouncey last year. So at the minimum, that position remains the same. The only thing he doesn't have is the vet savvy that Marquise Pouncey had, just being a leader in that room, a leader on that offense. So realistically, the Steelers do what they had to do. Adrian Clem's an improvement over Surratt, and hopefully Matt Canada can't do any worse than what we've seen from Randy Fiegner over the last 2 seasons. So the media is just being blind to that, and they want to stick to the narrative that the O-line, Ben is old, and that's it. That's their reasoning. There's nothing else. That's all their reasoning is.
It's last year's storyline rehashed because he didn't play for a year, and even going into the year where he ended up getting hurt, it was all the same stuff. You had to deal with, at least there, Le'Veon Bell's leaving. Well, he was already gone for a year before that. He didn't show up. Antonio Brown leaving. There's some things like that, but you're absolutely right. They've clung to certain things. You get like people on NFL Network like Cynthia Freyland who pull up these, mathematical models, statistical models, probability, and things of that nature. And sometimes I just look at it and I just roll my eyes, but there's quite a few fans who just they stick to it. A lot of folks listening to this or watching probably have a family member they talk football with that bring these things up. Somebody around the water cooler, if you're still into an office or environment where you actually are interacting with people, not just work from home. Because Lord knows, if somebody talks about my Steelers on the phone, or my uncle knows this, big Browns fan, and to be completely honest, he wasn't really sold on their draft. And he hasn't been. He hasn't been sold on Baker Mayfield either, but more on that type of stuff later. It's not just always my ideas. I get a little bit of stuff and I put it in the toolbox, and then that's what goes to work with me to the shop. You know what I mean? Some of the other bad stuff, the broken stuff, stays out of there. And there's a lot of broken ideas that you get from watching some of this, because they cover 32 teams. There's people that are still going to be stuck on. It was the same thing during the draft. You got to replace Bud Dupree. Yeah, I get it, but as I start to look at other things, that even Steven Nelson being released, I'm not feeling like everybody wants to write the Steelers off. And I think you hit the nail on the head. They've made changes. You had a problem. We've harped on this. You said it best. We brought this up for many years. When the Steelers aren't running the ball or getting the running back at least 20 to 25 touches, that includes in the passing game, which they weren't doing. They were using James Conner to help protect, because Alejandro Villanueva was a revolving door. Whether you're watching it or not, I don't care what the Wizards of Pro Football Focus say. It also has to deal with when Ben's throwing the short passes and getting rid of the ball real quick. That's kind of protecting his offensive line stats as well. That could have been by design because they knew there were deficiencies there. It could have just been a bad offensive coordinator. We didn't have much pre-snap motion. They're already talking about that with rookie camp. We hear it from the rookies like Freiermuth and Najee Harris, and they're talking about that. And there's other things. I don't want to go too far into this because there's comparisons I'm going to be making with the Steelers compared to the other teams in the AFC North who all think they've already got this in the bag. The Steelers are once again going to be the doormat, many predicting to finish last in the division like they've been writing them off to be for years. Even without Ben Roethlisberger 2 years ago and rolling with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges, I just saw the replay of the Cincinnati game from week 4 where they were both 0-3. And Rudolph was 24-28. They were talking about short passes, and even now this is a broken clock being right twice a day. Booger McFarland saying, who cares if it's short passes? He's still getting it done. You know what I mean? And they win the game. Yep.
And
they finally and they were still, and there was all that talk of Mike Tomlin maybe being a coach of the year twice in a year, 2 years in a row now. And I mean, Duck Hodges kind of he fell apart at the end there. The rest of the team fell apart too. We talked about how many Kareth White and Deion Kane, and these were the guys that were starting with Duck Hodges. And somehow, some way, they were still in the conversation almost to the finish line there. And everybody just wants to write this team off. They won the division last year. They won 11 straight games. They're going to say, oh, well, they played a bunch of weak teams. Well, everyone else in the AFC North, with the exception of those two two uncommon games, I should say, have a very common schedule. They play each other within their own division. The Steelers swept the Baltimore Ravens. I don't care what you want to say. The Wednesday game, that was ugly. And that was pretty much a lot of the beginning of the end with the scheduling. Everything is just screwing around with the Steelers. Like I said, the only team I felt they maybe got a more raw deal out of that was the Denver Broncos not having a quarterback. So that's just,
And I get the skepticism too. I'm not going to sit here and say I get why they're skeptical, but you have to look at the pros and the cons, and the media just wants to harp on all those cons and say, hey, it's going to be bad. It's going to be this. You don't know that. You're just assuming because you've been waiting for the Steelers franchise to fall off a cliff for the last decade, and it just hasn't happened yet. That's all it is.
Same thing they've been doing with the Patriots. It's funny when we talked about draft grades, and it's like Najee Harris, a lot of people had ranked as their top running back, Pat Freiermuth, like their second tight end, and they take both of those guys, and all of a sudden the draft grade's like a C. Yep. You're just like, well, they got two of the top players in these positions. Like, it's not like they grabbed the only punter. So presumably the top punter. I know it was like one of the last draft picks or whatever, but everything
still was the Ray Guy winner.
Yeah, I know, and it's just like, here, we're going to label this just because you didn't take the tackle we thought you should have, and that's kind of where all of this goes. A lot of people, I know there's some skepticism on the offensive line. We don't know how scheme and play calling is going to we think that that's going to factor greatly into the changes that we want to see on the offense. There's nowhere to go but up when it comes to the running game, and when you add a dynamic player like Harris, who as long as he stays healthy. I didn't have a problem with James Conner necessarily, but we knew coming out of college he wasn't necessarily the pass catcher. We talked many times about, we saw him come out of training camp, shot out of a cannon. Oh my God, this guy looks like a Greek god all of a sudden. He's chiseled, he's in shape, just look what he's doing. But when he's not there or he's not involved in that pass game, it doesn't really add any wrinkles or any unpredictability, and there just wasn't anything. And I know a lot of people want to see Ben under center. It's not how the whole NFL works. Actually, when you were talking about Ben throwing the ball, only two guys attempted more passes than Ben Roethlisberger last year. Actually, one of them was Tom Brady. He was the second most. 6'10" to Ben's 6'08", and then 6'26" for Matt Ryan. Now, they threw well over 4,000 yards, where Ben only had 3,803 yards. Ben had 33 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. The fewest interceptions out of most of the guys in this bunch. Brady had 12. Justin Herbert, 31 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, 595 attempts, 4,336 yards. The second coming. I get it. He was a rookie. He put up great numbers. But it's the same thing like the mock draft grades where we talk about. I understand he could have, maybe his ceiling's going to rise a little higher, and he had like a rookie year like pretty much no one else has had. But Ben's numbers are right there, but he's the old man on decline. I'm like, it's both. I look at it and it's both the same thing. It's not like Justin Herbert's running around here. He got sacked 32 times. Their offensive line was terrible. We've talked about past Steelers teams, Super Bowl teams with that offensive line in 2008. They had a great defense, undrafted running back, and all kinds of just no-name guys on the offensive line, really. 2010 wasn't much different than that. So, and by the way, the rest of this list, like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray was an interesting one too. Everybody's got like 66, 67%, somewhere in there, 65% completion rate. Everybody gets it, but Kyler Murray didn't throw for 4,000 either. He had 26 touchdowns and 12 interceptions, and that's on the up and up. They went 8-8, man. Sky's the limit, Super Bowl contender. It's exciting. It's the fancy new toy. Russell Wilson, Jared Goff, 20-13 there. Goff has always been the interesting one. I don't know. I don't see it. Deshaun Watson, Phillip Rivers, who's now retired, Matt Stafford, and then you get to Aaron Rodgers all the way down here at 13, still threw for 1 yard shy of 4,300 yards, 48 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, and they still run the ball in December. That's that December football thing that you're looking for. So let's jump to some AFC North teams. I'm getting tired of talking about everybody else. We got plenty of offseason for that, and, we've already wasted enough time there. We have, let's see. Let's just go. I'll go Baltimore Ravens. And they had to change this team over a few years ago. Lamar Jackson, he gets an MVP. They go 14-2, and then they didn't win in the playoffs. They got handled by Derrick Henry. And I always talk about like Greg Roman, the offensive coordinators, the guys that always had like you saw what happened with Colin Kaepernick, RG3. You get these type of offenses, and you install this thing with Lamar Jackson, and I'm wondering how long before everyone else figures it out. Because it's an arms race, particularly within your division and the teams that are looking to maybe play you in the postseason. So like Kansas City, for example. So you're looking at what do you got to do to beat the teams in order to get to the Super Bowl, right? In order to win that trophy. And I look at the Bengals. They're spending all this money on the secondary and other things. And we'll talk about this with the other teams in the AFC North. But the Steelers, they saw Derrick Henry running all over the Ravens the last couple of years. And I guarantee you that's something that they think, we can control the clock. We got a pretty decent defense, which, by the way, again, Cam Sutton, his numbers pretty similar or better in some cases than Steven Nelson. Alex Highsmith putting up better numbers than even Jadeveon Clowney, and something that's very – I understand Bud Dupree finally ascended, but if you go to Bud Dupree even a couple of years ago, there's a lot of promise with Alex Highsmith, so you can't say the Steelers have all of these different weaknesses. They pretty much return everything else. Terrell Edmonds is, in many cases, comparable with Justin Simmons, who's landing a big contract with the Denver Broncos. So there's a lot of parallels here where you can make a lot of cases. Edmonds was a lot better. So when people are always trying to rag on the Steelers, I'm starting to look up and down these rosters, and I've mentioned some of this before, but let's start with this Baltimore Ravens offense, who went out and got Sammy Watkins, who I've never been really enamored with. It's just like another guy that seems to be a reacher. I don't know that he's a wide receiver one. It's kind of like what they got. This is what was left. You got Hollywood Brown, who I was expecting some more things from. And then Rashad Bateman, they drafted. Is it a better group than what they had last year? Yeah, maybe. I mean, over Willie. Yeah, on paper, over Willie Snead or whatever. We were still impressed with Miles Boykin, but it doesn't look that's going to work out. Devin Duvernay, okay, it's a little better than that. They have the tight ends. You get the blocking tight end with Nick Boyle. You got the receiving tight end. Kind of do it all. Mark Andrews. This is what we're hoping Freiermuth could be, right? A tremendous amount of respect for Mark Andrews. I don't necessarily just ding Lamar Jackson's game either. You know what I mean? I get people want to call him a running back. They're primarily running the ball. You got J.K. Dobbins. That was a guy that we wanted before, Harris. Wanted him last year. And he goes in there and you plug and play, and it's working for them. So I think all the running backs in the AFC North are forces to be reckoned with, by the way. All of them.
If Harris is as advertised, I think the AFC North easily has the best running back, starting RB1s. And you look at depth, too. I mean, the Steelers obviously are I won't say easily, the Bengals probably are. But in terms of depth, I mean, like the Ravens and Browns have easily the best running back depth charts in the league right now. I mean, you look at the AFC North overall, running backs galore. And I think every team now, especially the Browns, Ravens, and Steelers, all have that smash mouth personality. They always have. Even when the Browns sucked, they still had that want to punch you in the mouth type of mindset. I think it fits the AFC North and what the AFC North has been known for years now perfectly.
Oh, yeah, and the Heisman QBs, too, like I was mentioning. And I wanted to pull up Jackson, too, because, you bring up a good point about not having to run the football. He only threw 376 attempts last year for 2,757 yards, 26 TDs, 9 interceptions. Everybody wants to point to those interceptions come at costly times. I'm trying to – let me see if I can pull up some more when he was a starter. I'm trying to see just how many times – has Lamar ever had a 300-yard game? I don't know that he has, and that's what I'm looking for. Okay.
Did he not have that week one against the Dolphins?
Yes, that's the exact one I just pulled up. It was about the only one that was off the top of my head. I'm trying to see last year. No, man. I mean, he barely has 200-yard games a lot of times. So
even during his MVP season?
Yeah, well, the 2019, just the one against the Dolphins, 324 yards. That was a week one game. Week two was his next one against the Cardinals, was his second highest with 272. So 50 yards fewer, roughly there. And he had 5 of those 36 touchdowns, all against the Dolphins as well. And, he had 6 games with less than 200 yards passing. And he becomes your MVP because he runs for 1,200 yards as a quarterback. He's a weapon. He got 1,000 last year. And 1,000, we got to talk about if the century mark's even a valid point when we start getting to 17 games. I digress. I'm going to say you've got to need an extra bucket in there or something. Yeah. Little pocket change. But, I mean, there was a game last year. He played the Chiefs, and he attempted 28 passes and only had 97 yards passing. 107 against the Cowboys, 113 against the Bengals, 163. It gets in that category. 208 against the Steelers in one game, and then he was on the COVID list, so they had Trace McSorley instead for that one game, that Wednesday afternoon debacle. That everybody's like, I'm not even going to be home to watch it. And I was like, hey, I'm going to be able to watch it. This is good for me. I wish I could have been
on my
there.
Computer in our football office.
Before they moved it, fans, you could have still been there for Thanksgiving night, and then they had the orders that changed like over the weekend or whatever with the COVID stuff, and then everybody had to get refunded, so that sucked. But my main point is like when everybody's making the argument about Ben throwing the ball or not having to throw, this is a perfect example right here. I understand he made some mistakes. You had that postseason game, you had some picks and stuff like that, but it's not any more detrimental than maybe what Lamar had done, even against Buffalo, or take some sacks, make some mistakes. Things don't necessarily work the way you would absolutely like them. But this offensive line, this is where the chief thing here is Ravens fans. I find it cute talking about, well, Kendrick Green, you're going to take this guy that's like a rookie, you're going to move him from guard to center. Well, you're doing that with Bradley Bozeman right now. They're trying to move him from left guard to center. Ronnie Stanley, you got to make sure he comes back 100% from a pretty catastrophic injury. And then you're making fun of the Steelers line, and you go and you sign Alejandro Villanueva. And you got to hope he's a road grader. You got to hope he's a road grader, because everybody else is going to be licking their chops. Garrett, Watt, anybody.
The Ravens fans have themselves convinced that the Steelers let their best offensive lineman go, and that's Alejandro Villanueva. And I think make the argument that their best offensive lineman is still there. I think Dotson at times was better, and I think Marquise Pouncey is, quite frankly, a bigger loss holistically than Villanueva was. Villanueva, I think, is the one that all Steelers fans were kind of like, he's gone. Can't wait for that day. And now all of a sudden it's this glorious savior. I understand Orlando Brown was a whole situation, and I think both the Chiefs and the Ravens both profited well from that entire ordeal. But the Ravens, I think, objectively got worse on their offensive line, because I think having Orlando Brown as your right tackle or having Alejandro Villanueva as his right tackle, I'll take Orlando Brown every single day of the week. That's just me. What do I know?
Yeah. Marshall Yanda is gone, retired.
And it's been downhill in that interior ever since. No Ravens fans are going to change my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he's retired. Kevin Zeitler, 31-year-old, coming over.
Bouncing around, can't stay at one place for that long.
Yeah, that's the oddest thing. Not with a team. Yeah, not with teams that are for lacking of offensive linemen, especially the Giants. It's kind of surprising. Who am I missing here? So Bozeman to center is the plan. Ben Cleveland, a third-round draft pick. Sound familiar? Sounds like Kevin Green, doesn't it? Or Kevin Green. Kendrick Green.
Kendrick Green. Yep.
Oh, man. Sorry. Rest in peace, Kevin, man. I'm going to have a problem with that. And then I got to think, is there an E on the end or no, because of the
just the color. Just the color green.
Just having done this for so long, they start to – everything melds together here. So, but yeah, Ben Cleveland. And then if Ronnie Stanley's there, is Villanueva going to be the left tackle? Will he be the right tackle, or are you going to move and change that line somewhere in
left
between?
Tackle.
Well, I'm sorry?
I hope Villanueva was the left tackle.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But then they don't even have Stanley, so then it's even more of a drop.
Yep.
And they're primarily a running team. Does it matter that they added these wide receivers? Not when Lamar can't throw. If you're going to ask Lamar to throw the ball as many times as Ben, that's not going to work out for them.
No, they needed some juice in that receiver room, and I do think that the Ravens receiver room is better today than it was this time last year. But on the flip side, I still think that a big part of this, and I've been saying this for 2 years now, ever since he was the MVP, until he really unleashes a full display of his arm. I'm not sitting there saying he can't throw the ball, because when you look at the stats indicate that he can throw the ball in terms of touchdowns, completion percentages, all that good stuff. Yardage hasn't been there, but the touchdowns are. I mean, he's money in the red zone, because you have to be afraid of that run game, and all of a sudden, you have Mark Andrews alone in the back of the end zone for an easy touchdown to him. But I think until he goes and gets the full-on, I can drop back and pass the ball with the best of them, with the Pat Mahomes, with the Russell Wilsons, with the Aaron Rodgers, until he gets to that point, I don't know if adding Rashad Bateman, adding Tylan Wallace, I like Bateman. He was one of my top 4 receivers in this class. He was in that tier right below the big 3, and the Ravens getting him where they got him was a huge deal. Does he instantly make them better? I don't know. Do I see him being the starter opposite of Marquise Brown at the latest mid-season? Yeah. But is he going to be sitting here putting up numbers that we saw from last year's top batch receivers, or dare I even say a Jamar Chase or a Jalen Waddle or a Devontae Smith? No, I don't see him doing that. And that's no knock on his talent. It's just the structure of the offense. I think his floor went up. I think he's going to be a very volume-driven receiver. So not to get into fantasy talks here, but if you're going to be looking at fantasy in PPR league, Bateman might be one of the only guy outside of Mark Andrews I'd trust as a receiver in this offense. but he's not going to have the point where I think you're seeing Lamar Jackson drop bombs on him down the field. So I really don't think that this offense is any different. It's still a Greg Roman type offense where we're going to run the ball with J.K. Dobbins, with Gus Edwards, with Justice Hill, with Lamar Jackson. We're going to throw it to Mark Andrews. Nick Boyle's going to just plow people over. We're hoping Ronnie Stanley does what he does, and it's going to be just a very still run-heavy offense. I don't really see that changing. And if Marquise Brown doesn't recover, because I don't think that he had the greatest sophomore year last year, if he doesn't come back and start taking strides forward, you make the argument maybe this room is worse, because I'm not sitting here saying Sammy Watkins is going to do a single thing. I'm not a huge fan of Sammy Watkins, which pains me as a Clemson guy. I love to see more out of him. He just hasn't done it. I think he was in a perfect situation with the Chiefs, and I think this is a less than ideal situation for him. So maybe Bateman ends up being the de facto number one just because of the fact that he has the best all-around game of the three of them. But I don't know. I still think that this team's identity is going to ride or die on Lamar Jackson and that run game and how well this offensive line does. I'm not going to sit here and say this offensive line is great. I think they're barely a step above Pittsburgh just for the fact that they have more proven commodities along it than the Steelers do. It wouldn't surprise me if we're sitting here this time next year saying the Steelers have the better offensive line outside of Ronnie Stanley, because I'm going to tell you right now, Ronnie Stanley, in my opinion, is the best offensive lineman in the AFC North. I think outside of him, you can make the argument that Dodson's going to be better than whoever they got left guard, if Ben Cleveland, whomever. If Bozeman's playing center, if it's Patrick McCarry playing center, or whoever, maybe Green's better. I don't know that right now. I still think I would take a healthy DeCastro over Kevin Zeitler, and we obviously know how I feel about Villanueva. So.
Yeah, he said it was an upgrade, but Justice Hill only 12 carries, 60 yards last year. There's a guy we were expecting maybe a little bit more out of, but jump into the defense.
Ingram's out of the way now, so you never know.
Well, that's true too. But Gus Edwards, I won't call him the nickname they use. That's Gus blasphemy. No, don't. I said don't.
I'm sorry.
Let's see what we got here. And I'm rattling off. We don't have official depth charts. These are kind of mismatched. There's some draft picks and other things that are in here. So let's just hammer through here. You got Derek Wolfe, Brandon Williams, Calais Campbell, Pernell McPhee. So I'm assuming, we're assuming that this is going to work without Yannick Ngakoue in this defense anymore, or Matt Judon. They may have some guys on the bench. I'm not going to rifle through every single person here. You got Patrick Queen, okay. Maybe Malik Harrison, LJ Fort, Tyus Bowser, Jason Owe. Those are all the linebackers. That might be a little sketchy, a little inexperienced there. I've seen Baltimore do it before. I've also seen Jim Harbaugh have losing seasons and not make the postseason too. So there's always that. But you know what? Baltimore will pull the trigger. Now, again, this was Ozzie Newsome too. Ozzie Newsome's no longer there as a general manager. So is that same kind of standard there for the Ravens? And a lot of people, like you said, it's the unknown versus the known. And when you're doing that type of thing and they're talking, of course, you're going to go with maybe some of the more proven commodities or just pencil things in and say, well, the Ravens, their defense has always done this and this. I look at the secondary. Okay, Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, Jimmy Smith still hangs around somehow.
Unbelievable.
I know.
He's been in the league since 2001.
Well, he's been 2011, I believe.
Yeah,
but
2011.
And he's supposed to be like a cap casualty and everything. He's still hanging around there. They had Tavon Young, who's had some injury and bang-up issues, but has been a solid nickel corner when healthy. Yep. They drafted Sean Wade. But I don't know what's going on with the safeties, man. Deshaun Elliott, Chuck Clark, Brandon Stevens, Jordan Richards, Anthony Levine, our Darius Washington signed as an undrafted free agent. This is kind of like a hodgepodge of bodies back there. This isn't, Eric Weddle and what's his face that knocked formerly of and I actually liked him before he did that too. That got hurt with Seattle. Now I'm trying to think what his name was. Earl Thomas.
Yeah.
So it's not Earl Thomas and Eric Weddle back there. It looks a little weak, and I got to have some concern because they built this secondary much like I think the Cincinnati Bengals are trying to do with their roster, because they look and see it again, the arms race. You got to look at the Steelers and the receivers they have, like Juju and Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson, and you got Ebron and Even the Cleveland Browns, Hooper is one of your tight ends, and Njoku, when he was drafted, was going to be this big threat, and he's still on the roster. You got to respect him at times. And you got Beckham, and you got Jarvis Landry, and I kind of look, okay, Marlon Humphrey's a dude. Marcus Peters, I will still say, somehow gets the job done, but man, he's a showboat, and he can be lazy at times on film. So I'm going to kind of just package up the defense, the offense here. I can't say for any intents and purposes that the Ravens are some definite on paper leader, front runner to win the AFC North. We know all these teams are going to be competitive. We got to talk about the other two teams and save some time for them. But the only thing I'll say is that if you have any Ravens fans that are in your ear, folks that are listening here, you can tell them what we said about, hey, look, you're moving a guard to center too. Maybe that works, maybe that doesn't, and you signed what was probably our worst offensive lineman. That's why we didn't keep him. So, how about them apples?
Yeah, I mean, my synopsis on the Ravens, I think the Ravens are still going to be competitive. I think they're still going to be what we expect the Ravens to be. I think they're going to find a way. I think, look at the corners. I think they have the best group of corners, at least starting corners, especially now with Steven Nelson being gone, in the AFC North, and that's no knock on Cam Sutton or Joe Hayden.
I love Cam Sutton, man.
I know, I love Cam Sutton too, but I want to see him now be the dude, nonstop, no competition on that that corner spot as number 2 beside Joe Hayden. And I think if he steps up, then yeah, because I'm going to trust him holistically more than I trust Marcus Peters. Marcus Peters just has the unbelievable ball skills. I mean, you look at his rookie year where he had 7 picks or something like that, and one of the worst coverage grades in the NFL, but he won Defensive Player of the Year or Defensive Rookie of the Year because he had 6 or 7 interceptions because he just finds the ball. He's always a threat to be in the way. But I think the Ravens, whether or not they make the playoffs, I'm sure they still do because I'm sure I just trust the Ravens to somehow figure it out. Even when they're low, they just seem to always figure it out. But I think patience will start wearing thin with certain aspects of the roster moving forward. I would be surprised if the Steelers don't split a series with them 1-1 this year. That's just it seems like it's always that way. I was surprised they swept them this year, realistically. I think that a lot of that is just circumstance, but I always peg in one of the Ravens game, probably the one in Pittsburgh is a loss, and one of the Ravens game, probably the one in Baltimore is a Steelers win. That's what I always assume. It seems like for the longest time there, Pittsburgh always lost at home to the Ravens and won on the road. I'm not saying it's the end-all be-all, but there was a stretch of time where that seemed like the given. So in my mind, I just assume regardless of what happens, it's going to be 1-1. Ravens are a tough out always because John Harbaugh is a good coach.
Yeah, no doubt.
They're very well coached on both sides of the ball, and they just like the Pittsburgh Steelers, they seem to always figure it out, even if it's 8-8 or 9-8 now or whatever, or 10-6 or. They always seem to figure it out.
That's going to mess with my head a lot trying to figure out records or whatever. The easiest one is just say 17-0. So very realistic there. Yeah, it pains me. I throw up in my mouth whenever I give some respect to the hairball. Well, really, it's only the guy in Baltimore. The guy that's up in that state or the university up north, I don't give any credit to. So I enjoy seeing him lose his mind. Speaking of teams that the Steelers have owned, and they didn't own for the first time in a long time a loss on the calendar against the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going to take the low-hanging fruit in the middle and save the Browns for last because hopefully all the Browns fans don't listen or fast forward to the end and hear what I really got to say about those losers. So anyways, yeah, Gavin would like this, the CEO of Steelers Twitter, and likes everybody except the Browns fans. Joe Burrow, man. Let's talk about how many games he didn't have with 300 yards passing at least last year.
Yeah.
He had 5. I mean, I know he missed 6 games here. He had one game with 406. He had a few with 300, a few 200 yards game. Only 2 games without 200 yards passing. He had one where against the Browns where he attempted 61 passes. Come on, man. I like that. I like that segment. I forget who does that all. Was that the Randy Moss thing? Come on, man. Looked pretty sharp for a rookie. He was running for his life because the offensive line, through injuries and other reasons, just doesn't exist there in Cincinnati. We're not quite sure if it will again. There's a lot of question marks there too, which is why I find it kind of tongue-in-cheek to bring some of this stuff up. Joe Mixon's running back. They drafted Jamar Chase. You still have Tyler Boyd. We're going to use the word dude from now on. Is that what we're going to say? Tyler Boyd's a dude. He's a dude. T. Higgins could be a dude too. And then where do we go from here? I mean, I'm looking at their centers. Trey Hopkins, Billy Price. They drafted Trey Hill, a guy you liked a lot. Jonah Williams, maybe one of the tackles. Other tackle, they signed Riley Rife. You got Dante Smith that they drafted. Fred Johnson, who was with the Steelers that we liked. Who else do we got here? There's just like a lot of guys. I mean, not that there's a problem with undrafted or lower picks. We've seen that work out with the Steelers quite a bit. So you got one maybe as a guard, Quentin Spain, Xavier Suafilo, and then on the other side, Jonah Williams, who they invested a pick in, and that didn't really get off the ground right away either. Oh, I'm sorry, he was one of the tackles. Michael Jordan here, and then Jackson Carman in the second round that they drafted, another guy. I don't know. That was a name that I thought, was it high? Was it, I don't know. You're better versed at that, especially with the offensive lineman than I am. I'm just trying to figure out how this all works together. I see Drew Sample here. I had better high hopes for him last year, and he just burned out, man. Yeah. I was paying attention to him, and that just didn't work. CJ Uzoma, Joe Mixon, he could still be a dude, but they had trouble running the ball at times. You had mentioned they probably have the worst running back depth chart here. Samjay Perine, Travion Williams. They drafted Chris Evans. They signed Puka Williams as an undrafted free agent. So they got a number of names coming to camp here. I just don't know that this is all going to get it together. Obviously, they got a bunch of, would be studs here at the wide receivers. Joe Mixon is an every down back. I think Joe Burrow is a safe play as a quarterback and going into the future unless he gets ruined. More than likely physically. Maybe he gets shook like Mason Rudolph did. You don't know. It's the whole, David Carr getting sacked too many times, Tim Couch getting sacked too many times. Of course, being a guy that would have been at Ohio State, I still have a little bit of that affection connection with that, and you don't want to see him necessarily fail or fall flat on his face, other than for the fact that he plays for the Cincinnati Bengals and he's the opposition there. But and I know you probably don't have a love loss either for Joe Burrow, but I look at the offense, Zach, and Burrow can get more done than Andy Dalton or any of these other guys did. I just don't know that they got enough done here. When we go to the defensive side, they've added some pieces there as well. We'll touch on that in a second.
Yeah, I think the Bengals, more than almost any team in the AFC North, are going to really hinge on their health. I mean, you look at the receiver room. In my opinion, and Steelers fans will probably get upset about this, I think the Bengals receiver room rivals the Steelers just in terms of depth. I mean, they have 4 legit dudes that we have seen stuff consistently from. Obviously, Jamar Chase hasn't played a snap in the NFL yet. I have no reason to believe that he won't. I mean, he was my highest rated receiver that I've seen in recent years. In my time evaluating, I just think he's a dude, and he already has the chemistry of Joe Burrow. You don't have to work on that. Tyler Boyd, I think, is one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. Does not get nearly enough credit. And, maybe it's going to go back to my old days of playing against him in single-A high school football in Western PA. And then T. Higgins, again, Clemson bias aside, T. Higgins was very good as a rookie last year. They had, and Auden Tate, can't forget him. A lot of people doubted him. He had some very good moments as a receiver over the last couple of years, So, they have a legitimate 4 deep at receiver that if Burrow stays healthy and he can stay upright, he's going to have the opportunity to throw the ball to these dudes. Offensive line, Jonah Williams is a very good player. He's played 10 games in 2 years. 10 out of 32 games is not exactly instilling a lot of confidence in his ability to stay healthy. He gets banged up. He missed his entire rookie year with, I think it was a labrum, and he had 2 injuries last year during the season, and he had a knee injury that put him on IR for the rest of the season at the end of it. So he missed a lot of time. When he's on the field, he was very good last year. Can he stay healthy? Michael Jordan is not that great. I'd be surprised if Jackson Carman's not starting by day one at the left guard position for him, especially because it sounds like, from what I've heard coming out of Cincinnati, a lot of the signs look like as if they are doing everything in their power to get him to be the dude at left guard going into this season. Trey Hopkins, he's all right. He's not anything to write home about. And you got Riley Reiff. He's I think a very under the radar signing. He's kind of on the older side at this point. He's getting not old, but he's getting up there in terms of age for offensive linemen. He's kind of a wild card. Is he going to be consistently good at this point with them, especially kind of really not having a whole lot from Quentin Spain inside? Maybe. I think he's a good offensive lineman at this point in his career. And I think, a lot of fans were pounding the table for Penei Sewell. I think they kind of felt confident that Jonah Williams stays healthy and that Riley Reiff is the answer at right tackle. And if that's the case, and Jackson Carman bumps in there, Sewell was this can't-miss prospect in most people's eyes. But realistically, they still found a way to improve their offensive line. So it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if he ended up kind of, being an answer there at right tackle. And then you look at the running back room. I mean, Joe Mixon, can he stay healthy? Can Joe Burrow stay healthy? Can Jonah Williams stay healthy? I think they can, but who knows? Because history hasn't indicated that they can at this point. And then you look at the depth behind Joe Mixon. I mean, Samaje Perine, I liked them a lot coming out, but that was a little bit ago. And, Travion Williams, I thought got a lot of comps to a very poor man's, almost broke man's Le'Veon Bell. Who knows what he's going to bring in. Chris Evans, not a huge fan of his game at Michigan. So I don't really know where they go. If Joe Mixon goes down, they're looking at Perine being the guy, and I don't really know how good that's going to be for him. Joe Mixon, no doubt, is a phenomenal running back, but health has been a concern at times, and overall just consistency and productivity has been a concern at times. So this offense has the potential to be very good and very interesting, to say the least. It also has the ability to potentially blow up in their faces if, injuries start piling up yet again for them, which we've seen in recent years. So the ceiling is very good offense. The floor is train wreck.
You see me doing this. I'm about to queue up, as you say, the offense. What do we think about their defense? Okay, you go. I hate doing this again because you have some tentative names and you've got some draft picks here. Sam Hubbard, Cam Sample, Trey Hendrickson, Khalid Kareem. Okay, I think that's okay with their defensive ends. Your defensive tackles, DJ Reader. They snagged Larry Ogunjobi from the Cleveland Browns, Mike Daniels, Tyler Shelvin. I'm going to go through everybody else, I guess, here. They drafted Joseph Osai, Wyatt Hubert, 7th rounder. I'm not familiar with him. I'll be completely honest. Your other linebackers here, Akeem Davis-Guither, Jermaine Pratt, Logan Wilson. Then you got the secondary. Darius Phillips. They have Eli Apple on this roster too. Jeez, oh man. They're just stashing guys away. Wait, Chidobe Awuzie, Mike Hilton, Trey Waynes. They're trying to see whatever can stick. Jesse Bates. Okay, I took a lot of heat last year because I didn't necessarily care for his game, and he stepped it up. And it was a guy we liked. It's not like I didn't like him coming out of college. So, I mean, it's more than fair to backpedal on that. He's probably the best player on this defense right now. And I think I actually said that last year, too. It was just that their defense was just not very good. So it was like his game was here. The rest of that defense, it brought down the curve. Von Bell. I just don't know. It's the same thing. Like you said, it pains you. Talk about former Clemson guys, talk about former Ohio State guys, and somebody that I was like, oh, the Steelers are in the market for a safety, and they take Sean Davis. And I'm like, what? They could have had Von Bell. Why not Von Bell? And he's been bouncing around. And I will say this much, at least. Von Bell and Jesse Bates, I think, is better than whatever the Ravens are fielding. And
agreed.
Possibly the Cleveland Browns, too, as safety position. We'll see here. Maybe the secondary as a whole with Awuzie, Waynes. Who's my other guy? Well, Darius Phillips, Eli Apple. I guess you got to figure out however this goes. I'm going to see what Mike Hilton ends up doing here, too. It's just another gathering of the masses, I guess, and see what ends up working out, the arms race. But the defense, they had Carl Lewis was a pass rushing specialist. Is that the right name now? I mean,
Carl Lawson.
Carl Lawson. Like, that's an Olympian. Carl Lewis. Yeah. I wonder why that didn't work out. Carl Lawson. I'm sorry. Brain hemorrhage. So we'll see. Sam Hubbard was hurt for part of the year last year. He's kind of found his niche here with this defense. Larry Ogunjobi, we know who he was. Trey Hendrickson. So they may improve in those spots compared to where they were. I'm just not completely sold that they have the entire overhaul. I think this team is still a work in progress. And if the defense can't get anything really done, it's going to make it a little harder of a job on Joe Burrow and that offense.
For sure. I think they do have bodies there. The secondary is interesting. They have some cast-offs and some guys that, aren't bad players. I mean, Chidobe Awuzie is not a bad player. Trey Waynes has not been a bad player. Mike Hilton, obviously, all Steelers fans know how great he was. They have some interesting bodies. Can they put it all together and find a combination of guys that's going to work on that back end? I do agree, Jesse Bates. I think Jesse Bates is still one of the most underrated safeties in the league. He's been playing at a very high level since he came in 2018. And he doesn't get nearly the recognition that he should. I'm not going to sit there and say he's better than Minkah Fitzpatrick, so Steelers fans listening, relax. But he's a very good safety, a very reliable single high. I know there's a lot of people that wanted him in Pittsburgh whenever he was coming out in 2018, myself included. So they have a very good secondary. They always seem to kind of just stockpile DBs, for, like you said, like that arms race, knowing what they have to go against with other teams in the division. The front seven's interesting. I don't think there's anyone that's really striking fear in me, but they definitely have a solid group. Sam Hubbard's been quietly very good as well. I like Joseph Osai a lot. I think he's going to be a very productive player for them. I think getting him in the third round was good value for them. DJ Reader, liked a lot. Ogunjobi is a very good player. Don't care for him as a person necessarily, just based on the very limited sound bites I often hear from him, but they have people. It's not like they don't. The Bengals roster, I think, of all the teams that were picking in the top 5, top 7 this year, the Bengals would be probably the one I'm the most excited about. But again, can the defense do enough to keep Joe Burrow off the field, and can the offense keep the defense off the field, vice versa? Can they all stay healthy as a unit for once? How are we going to see Zach Taylor now take some of these bodies he has and you just start utilizing them? There's a lot of questions I think the Bengals need to answer before we really start crowning them. And to sit there and for some of these people in the media to be sitting there and automatically crowning them a better team than the Steelers, I think is a bit premature, especially whenever we see how injuries can derail seasons. In Pittsburgh, we've seen it, and certainly we've seen it in Cincinnati. So for me, kind of seeing what they can do collectively when healthy, and if Zach Taylor is the real deal as a coach, I think it's going to be the bigger story here. Joe Burrow can do it, and that defense can do it, and they can be pesky, especially on the back end. So they're an interesting team. I'm not going to sit there and say that they're any better than any other AFC North teams right now, but I don't think they're hardly the team that they were last year. And I think they will be I think they'll be a hard out for a lot of teams, particularly AFC North teams this year as well. Especially start getting towards the end of the season, traveling to the crappy weather that you oftentimes see in Cincinnati. It's going to be a tough out, especially if Joe Burrow is still slinging the rock around at that point, upright and being able to play a full 17-game season. So, if that happens, the Bengals could be very much in the mix and really kind of take the AFC North from what we saw as one of the best divisions in football last year to being the best division in football, up there with the NFC West. So I think the Bengals are just a very interesting team that we don't know how they're going to pan out because there's so many variables at play with how they could perform, good and bad.
That's all fair. I think they got the quarterback thing figured out, at least for now. It's not going to be something they're going to move on for a few years. It's more than I could say for maybe even the Ravens or the Browns, to be completely honest, and that may surprise some people. When you're picking number 1 overall, hopefully you get it right. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just the one thing. And I had thought initially maybe Joe Burrow had just maybe some of the right cast still there, a few pieces. Even in talking to some Bengals fans, I think this team would have been scarier if Marvin Lewis actually still kind of hung around. As silly as that seems, and I know the playoff hump and everything like that, having not won a playoff game since like 1990? And
something like that.
Yeah, 90 or 91, and it's just like, I get it, but they had some consistency there where they were winning some division titles, they were making the playoffs at the very least, and they had some winning seasons, and it just seems like they're so far detached from what that was. I don't know how much closer they come to that with this new 17-game schedule? Can they play spoiler? Absolutely. We saw it last year with, I don't even know who the heck the quarterback was. I was at the game. And they can't. I'm like, what happened? Well, what happened was the Steelers tried to put like motion and other stuff into this game plan. They panicked on a week's notice and tried to run the football, and they didn't do that well either. They put Ben under center. And if I recall correctly, he actually tripped over someone, over one of the linemen's feet or something, and it could have been a major disaster. And there was just some things like that just I kid, of course. It was Ryan Finley, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah, because it wasn't they had Brad Allen too, but I think he had gotten hurt also, and it was just one of those things like, oh, going back down here, and we're going to see Benny Snell as the feature back again like we did the previous year in 2019, and Ryan Finley is the quarterback. So that leaves us with one more team. My bugaboo here. I should just cut it short and save this for another day, because this might be this one might be, I could get long-winded. I could ramble. It happens. Just as well. We're both cut from the same cloth, my friend. How do I get through this? I mentioned a few of these things already. You got Baker Mayfield. These guys are coming up. Him and Lamar Jackson are coming up on contracts soon. I know you like Andrew Berry as a GM. You're a little more defensive, protective of the Browns. Maybe it's just because I know so many people that I detest their fandom of the Cleveland Browns that it kind of just doesn't sit as well with me.
Rolls off the back, I get it.
Yeah, and I mean, and then you get some people, like I said, I got my buddy that was my best man in my wedding, and I got my uncle who was like a dad to me, and they're both big Browns fans, and my one buddy's kind of like, okay, Greg Newsome, draft pick, going to solve the whole cornerback type issue, and they got JOK. I'm not going to try and say Jeremiah Wasu-Koromoro's name too many times, so we'll just do that. And we liked him, but maybe it's a fit in a 3-4 versus a 4-3, and how are they going to use him? And now we find out there's health issues, and how does that impact everything? It seems like a very Cleveland thing to do. But I feel like this is really their window. It's this year, boom or bust. They limped into the playoffs with the Steelers sitting like 8 starters. It was still a very competitive game with Mason Rudolph, who half of you Yinzers hate anyways. And he had over a 300-yard passing game on them. Ben still dropped 500 on them if it wasn't for the turnovers. They don't get out of the wild card round. The Steelers, in my opinion, beat themselves. They get to play Kansas City and knock out Patrick Mahomes, and they can't beat Chad Henne with like a quarter of football still left. And all anyone can talk about is how they got to that game, played KC, and played them tight. And I'm like, I'm here like McFly. I'm like knocking on, my head. I'm like, am I the only one paying attention here? So, I mean, some of the things we knocked, we'll see. Odell Beckham, he can't stay on the field. He still hasn't had the impact exactly what I said he wouldn't. And I didn't say it because of injury. I just didn't think he would have the impact a lot of people thought he would in Cleveland. He really still hasn't. He's kind of been like an afterthought. Jarvis Landry's kind of the guy. He's a dude, but he never seems to be like a wide receiver one dude. You know what I mean?
Just volume. Yeah,
and I mean it's I get it. He's a utility guy. He catches everything that goes his direction. But I forgot who I was going to look up here. Maybe Mayfield in a second. But let me see. Still rifling through these random thoughts. So you get Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham as your wide receivers. Rashard Higgins, who. Hey, he stuck around as a 5th-round pick in 2016, and I actually think a lot of times when he's on the field, it's more dangerous. Like him and Mayfield have more going on than anybody else. Donovan Peoples-Jones, a 6th-round pick last year, I think they're blowing him up a little more than what he might be. Anthony Schwartz is a guy we liked, one of the fastest guys in the draft, or fastest guy in the draft. But how does he end up being used? 3rd-round pick? I mean, hey, 3rd-round picks, we've seen guys, 3rd, 4th round, blow up. So we'll see. We'll see how that ends up working out. I don't necessarily have any problems with the wide receivers. We've really already talked about the running backs, but let's just highlight again that Nick Chubb, one of the rushing leaders here consistently. Kareem Hunt was before with Kansas City, winds up here and is like a heck of a 1-2 punch. I talked about Austin Hooper. David Njoku still making hay here. Harrison Bryant, who they drafted last year, had some spot duty here while other guys were hurt or out or COVID listed or whatever was the case. He showed some flashes there. Offensive line, Jedrick Wills, He ended up being all right as the left tackle. And you still have Joel Bitonio, who's probably one of their maybe the longest tenured guys still left as a left guard. J.C. Treader, he came over from Green Bay. This offensive line, Wyatt Teller, Jack Conklin, they've been doing good. They've been solid. They've got it fixed up. That's what you would want. You want to see the Steelers rebound in much the way that the Browns' offensive line was in shambles now. Now they're not. And you made an interesting comment here. I'll save it for you with one of the guys on the depth, but I just want to make the mention to come full circle of this. I'm still not the big – a lot of guys love Baker Mayfield. I'm not the big truther when it comes to him. Again, we talk about Ben Roethlisberger numbers and things like that. 486 attempts in 2020. It matches exactly what he did his rookie season. He had one fewer TD, 26 touchdowns. He didn't throw as many interceptions, but – again, he's not throwing as many attempts. The year before, 22 and 21, which Baker do you get? We got more of a ground-based, maybe balanced Browns rushing attack that kind of maybe takes the load off his shoulders. Maybe makes it a little bit easier for him to do his job there. Only 2 games over 300 yards. He had a couple with 297. Several games, 7 of them, in fact, fewer than 200 yards passing. Multiple touchdown games. He went 4 games, Zach, 4 games, quarter of a season without throwing a touchdown pass last year. He had 3 games where he only tossed 1. He had a 5-touchdown game against the Bengals, week 7. Again, Bengals. Bengals. And then a really oddball game against the Tennessee Titans, too. That shootout 41-35 where he threw 4. They're going to pay this guy eventually. I know somebody was trying to toss out a number. Oh, pay him like 25 or 30. These guys,
those days are gone.
Him and Lamar. Once Dak what's Dak getting? 41. That's where we're headed.
An astronomical amount.
That's where. Well, in Mahomes, yep. This is where we're headed. Whether these guys have hardware or not in the trophy case. This for me.
Quarterback, you hold on to him.
Yeah, this for me. Now this is what, year 4. Yeah, so they can still 5th-year option these guys. Both franchises with Lamar Jackson with Baltimore, Baker Mayfield here with the Browns. But I feel we're starting to see, and I don't know how much if there's rollover money and stuff like that, but the contracts they've been throwing out trying to add guys like Jadeveon Clowney or last year Austin Hooper, I think. What's the safety's name that they just got? Johnson. I'm sorry? John Johnson the third. Mouthful there. I don't know why I was saying Jack Johnson. I'm thinking of the Penguins. That's why. Yeah. Jack Johnson. Oh, geez. Anyways, for my hockey fans. So John Johnson, they throw out money for some of these contracts, and I just have a feeling like once you start paying that you have that luxury until you start paying the quarterback, and then you'll no longer have this luxury. So it'll be interesting to see what they do after this year. But then again, we still have to play through 2021, so that's why I'm saying I'm like this is kind of their window, and we're going to see how some of this pieces together. The offense looks pretty solid, for my opinion. I can't dog too much here. The only thing is, it's like this goes how Baker Mayfield goes, and as long as you keep him in a kind of a controlled environment where you're not asking him to do too much, to shoulder all the load, and you kind of hand the ball off, and you get Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt going, then you know what, the Browns can control the clock, and they can still put some points on the board, and that's probably the part that makes them a little bit scarier than their defense.
Yeah, I go back and forth here. I think. I'm not going to sit here and at all criticize anybody for, why they feel the way they feel about the Browns in the media, the big time media. Because I think you look at the Browns on paper, offensively, I mean, they don't have holes on their offense right now. I mean, like their offensive line is the best in the AFC North. It's one of the best, if not the best in the NFL. They have a lot of bodies there. Interestingly enough, I was pointing out to you, I don't know where Chris Hubbard starts to kind of fall into all this stuff here. They gave him a nice little contract whenever he was, filling in for Marcus Gilbert and being the swing tackle and all that good stuff, the 7th or the 6th man, eligible receiver, whatever, number 74. He got a nice paycheck there, and now he's kind of starting to drift back on that depth chart a little bit, so who knows what his stance is there. Just a little name to keep in mind if he were to become available. It wouldn't be surprising to see the Steelers potentially kick the tires on him just, out of familiarity. But I think receiver-wise, I don't think OBJ's ever done what he was expected to do for what they gave up for him. I like Jarvis Landry a lot. I think he's always going to be a complimentary receiver who just catches everything. He's not flashy. He's not going to blow the top off you. He just gets the job done, and I respect the hell out of him for that. And like you said, Rashard Higgins, like him and Baker seem to be on the same wavelength all the time. And anytime I see him on the field, I instantly assume he's going to be a guy that's getting looked at. Tight end wise, they have a 3 deep, legit tight end group. Their tight end group might be deeper than the Ravens, even though they had Josh Oliver over in Baltimore. You have Harrison Bryant, I know they're very high on. Obviously, Austin Hooper, they didn't dish out that money for nothing. And then David Njoku, even with all the trade rumors going on, he's still a legit tight end. I'm not saying he's elite by any means, but he's still a very good tight end. And then you look at the running backs. I mean, I don't think anyone's ever going to sit here and say that the Browns don't have the best 1-2 punch in the NFL. I mean, Nick Chubb is a top 5 running back in the league, if not top 3, for just what he does. And then Kareem Hunt is probably the best number 2 running back in the NFL right now, just again based on what he does. So Baker Mayfield kind of is that linchpin here. I was just looking at the numbers just because I was curious. In the games where the Browns had asked Baker to throw over 35 times last year. We're not talking about Ben's 50 yards. We're talking about just over 35. Lost to the Baltimore week 1. He beat Indianapolis week 5 with 37 attempts. He had 39 attempts against Baltimore. In week 14 against Baltimore, he had 47 attempts. They lost that game in that shootout, which was one of the best games I saw last season. Fantastic game.
No defense in that game, by the way.
No defense at all. Baker threw 47 times and lost. And then week 16, he threw 53 times against the Jets, and they lost. The same Jets team that we saw pick number 2 overall this year. So I think, and you look at all the games, they were very good when they had him below 35 passes a game. And I think, we saw their offense evolve, and they kind of went on. They got hot there around week 10 last year, where they finished off the season with 6 wins and 2 losses in the back half of the season. A lot of that was they started, really just digging in and finding their identity. They're a run team. They're going to ride the wheels with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and let Baker Mayfield kind of just be that game manager who you can kind of put in moments where he needs to get the ball done. He's not a bad talent, but, then it brings up the whole question in today's game where you see these dudes really throwing the ball and they have to throw the ball. Is that going to be good enough with the talent they have there? I think it is. I think that's probably why people love the Browns so much, because on paper, we talk about the summer paper champions. The Browns have probably the best overall roster in the AFC North. But is that going to equal wins? Is that going to equal, them really getting it done? I don't know. I think it's easy to sit there and pick them to be the favorite because of that. They finally seemingly have a good coach in Kevin Stefanski. Andrew Berry, like you mentioned, I will not ever not speak highly of him. I'll go about the double negative there. He's a very good GM.
Zach wants a job.
he's a very good GM. I had a lot of respect for him when he was in Philadelphia. A lot of respect for him now. So I think that they finally have the leadership in place and the coaching in place to make them a legitimate threat. But I agree with you. I think they ride or die with Baker because Nick Chubb's going to get the job done. That offensive line's giving them no excuses, and they have weapons for him. So can Baker do enough to win, but not do too much to the point where he's a detriment? I don't know. I think maybe another year with kind of having that system and a little bit more of a regularized setup this year in terms of COVID not necessarily negatively impacting the summer. Maybe he gets on a page. They saw what was working last year, and him and Stefanski get a game plan down, and he takes that step and becomes worth the money they're paying him. I'm hesitant because he's a franchise quarterback. He'll get paid and he'll be a starter someplace. I just don't know how much it's going to be in Cleveland. And when they do pay him, is he going to be good enough to then pick up for the very clear lack in talent they'll have, as we've seen in this new cap era where quarterbacks take up such a large percentage of the salary cap and other guys become natural casualties? Will he be able to rise up? And obviously that's a conversation for 2-3 years down the road now. But it has to be something that's in the Browns' eyes, and I think that's why they're loading up with the John Johnsons, the Javion Clowneys of the world, going after these premier guys, getting guys they can fill in there and to win now, because really I think they do have a good window over the next 3 seasons, because you can assume that he's going to have this contract last year on his rookie deal. They exercise his 5th-year option, and they wanted to do the franchise tag. So they have 3 years of control if they really want it right now, if they don't extend him long-term, to really get something happening. And I think that's why you see them doing all these things on offense. And I think it's going to work for them. I think they are not the same Browns we've seen, but I'm not going to crown them anything until we see them get over that hump and do more than just beat the Steelers in a wacky game and in a wild card round. Let me see you go and win the division. Let me see you go and beat the Steelers in the playoffs, then beat the Chiefs, then beat the Bills. You start beating some of those big heavyweights. I'm not talking about the Steelers as a heavyweight, but I'm talking about the cream of the crop in the AFC as we know it right now, being the Bills and the Chiefs. Go and beat the AFC North, beat the Ravens twice, instead of losing to them twice. Beat the Steelers twice instead of losing to them once. I mean twice in the regular season for you Browns fans that are listening and sitting there saying, oh, we did beat them twice. In the regular season, go out there, win the AFC North. You win the AFC North, you start making some noise in the playoffs, then I'll officially buy in completely to the Browns being here, for at least for the time being. Until that happens, I'm whatever.
Yeah, and you know what? And we talk about the arms race. I'm not sure that they did enough here. I mean, Myles Garrett was a no-brainer when they had the top overall pick, and he's every bit as good as T.J. Watt. Those guys will be neck and neck as far as the pass rushing specialists are concerned for years to come, and Defensive Player of the Year considerations too. Yep. Man, I apologize. Anybody that's watching this, I'm hoping I don't sniffle. I had allergies just started kicking in out of nowhere here toward the end of this, but I don't know what the heck they're going to do everywhere else here. I'm not sold on Clowney. I had a bunch of stats I rattled off in a previous show. You can go back and look at those and listen to those. But Alex Highsmith in the final 8 games of the year put up more sacks because Clowney had 0. And I believe he got to the quarterback. Quarterback hits just as much, tackles for loss, more tackles, etc. He was creating more splash than Clowney. Will Clowney be any better with Myles Garrett paired on the other side? I'm not sold on the interior. This was something that you brought up, and I had forgotten that Ogunjobi had ended up going to the Bengals when we were talking in the back room. So I was like, holy crap, they're going to try to rely on who? Malik Jackson? He's been bouncing around for a while. Elliott Jordan, Andrew Billings. They got to do something here. Get rid of Sheldon Richardson, and Larry Ogunjobi is just unconscionable. I don't understand what they were doing here with the defensive front. I know you're always playing with money and things of that nature, but I was kind of thinking you're all in to win. Tech McKinley getting added to this, I wouldn't even count on him necessarily making it to past training camp maybe. You don't know. This guy has been on a short leash now for a while with several teams. Sione Takitaki, Anthony Walker, Jacob Phillips, Mac Wilson, Malcolm Smith, Tony Fields, the draft pick, JOK, the second rounder. They got a mess of linebackers in here. I don't know that this necessarily solves their linebacker problem. They had Joe Schobert and Christian Kirksey, I thought was a lot better, and Landon Collins. They had those guys. Definitely a lot better unit there. Denzel Ward, is he the guy he was when he was a rookie, or is he something else right now? And is that somebody that's going to command a high price tag in the near future? They grabbed John Johnson. Will it work with Grant Delpit, who missed last year? Second round pick. It was a guy we had very, very highly ranked as far as a safety. You're counting on a rookie, maybe Greg Newsome, to come in because Greedy Williams kind of flamed out there too, and that was a guy we all were mocking the Steelers as a first-round pick. So it's not that we didn't like these guys, but for one reason or another, they don't seem to be working. And then they had Troy Hill, from the Rams or whatever that they brought over too. I don't know that their arms race necessarily lines up well, defending against the Steelers' weapons, defending against the Bengals' weapons, and maybe even defending against what the Ravens put together if they still have the same kind of rushing attack. I think this is going to be the big weak link. Everyone's saying, "Oh, look how dangerous the Cleveland Browns defense is going to be this year," and you have just as many unproven names or guys that haven't been a dude maybe in a while, like Clowney. It's a flashy name. It's a former first-round draft pick, but this is the not-for-long league. What have you done for me lately? Not much. So when you throw all this on here, I see a bunch of question marks, and they're blinking and flashing at me just as much as if somebody wants to talk about the Steelers' offensive line or the Ravens' offensive line or are the Bengals in a rebuild? Or are they going to be competitive? This is the thing that sticks out for me because it signals to me that this is not a complete team, and this is a team that is going to have to be very competitive. There's going to be a lot of competitive games in the AFC North, and that's the way I feel about the Browns. Before I give you my pick for, I guess, who the biggest nemesis will be out of the entire AFC North.
Myles Garrett, like you said, he's the cornerstone. He's the dude. He is the Cleveland Browns. He's in that same tier conversation as for the best, best defensive player in the league with Aaron Donald. He's in that same category. And obviously, Aaron Donald's in a category on his own. I'm not even trying to sit there and compare him to that, but he is in that top 5. I put him up there, I put Watt in there, and like they're going to be linked as long as Watt stays in Pittsburgh. The two of them are going to be linked forever. One was at the front of the 17 draft, one was at the back of the 17 draft. And in terms of the first round, I should say, excuse me. But that Clowney's in it.
Wait, you get Watt at the tail end, like Mr. Irrelevant.
Like Mr. Irrelevant, yeah, he was 259.
Man, they know how to draft.
Clowney's a name at this point. He doesn't move the needle for me at all. Can he still play? Yeah. Can he still do well against the run? Yeah. He's a name at this point. Tack McKinley doesn't do anything for me. The Falcons were not exactly sitting there trying to keep him. He wasn't even with the Falcons last year, if I'm mistaken. I'm pretty sure he was with Las Vegas. So
like a half year or something.
Half a year. Yeah. Like he's I'm not calling him a bust, but he certainly wasn't worth the first rounder. I'm sure the Falcons wish they would have gotten Watt or someone else like that instead of McKinley. But I think realistically, that D line, I'm sorry, doesn't do much for me. I loved Andrew Billings. I think he's a very good, type of interior D lineman that can really just plug in there. He's done well with the Bengals. He did well with the Browns last year. Bengals last year.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Malik Jackson again. What has he done recently beyond 2017, that wonder year at the Jaguars? Can he still play? Yeah, these guys can still play. I'm not sitting here saying they can't still play, but they're names at this point. If this was 2017. Good Lord, I'd take Javion Clowney, Malik Jackson, and Myles Garrett on my D-line every day of the week, but it's 2021, and I don't know if these dudes are going to really do it. Can they be effective and serviceable? Yeah, but they're not striking fear in me as we currently stand with it. And that linebacker room, there's a lot of bodies, there's a lot of interesting, pieces you could put around and do a lot of different stuff with it. Taki, he's done very well. I'm not sitting there saying he's great. I still... I question the value in the third round, but, the draft, though, goes the way it goes, and people go earlier than you think they do. Everyone knows my opinion on Mack Wilson. I'm not going to change on that. I think Mack Wilson is kind of just there. He doesn't do anything for me. I know everyone wanted him to be drafted by Pittsburgh, and that was the one linebacker in that class back in 2019 where I'm like, nope, it's Devin Bush or nothing. I don't want, not nothing, but not Mack Wilson. And the DBs they get there, they draft Denzel Ward. They exercise his 5th-year option, hoping he gets back to that form. John Johnson was a high-profile safety. I think he's going to improve for them on the back end. Grant Delpit stays healthy. Can he be a very productive safety? You're assuming yes, but he hasn't really done much to this point. Hoping he can get in there and do well with John Johnson. And then I like Greg Newsome. I'm not going to lie to you. Greg Newsome, going there really helps solidify that back end because Greedy Williams, again, is he going to be the dude? I don't know. So I think Greg Newsome makes their secondary better. He's a phenomenal player. I was very upset that he ended up going to Cleveland because I would have loved for him to go anywhere else but Cleveland or even in the AFC North in general. So this defense has question marks, in my opinion. And I think that's going to be the one detriment. We saw teams last year that could put points up on this defense. It's not like they were a surefire defense. And yeah, they added a lot of bodies. And maybe Tommy Togiai, the one of your boys from Ohio State on the D line comes in there and, shores them up and really steps up and does a lot there on that interior D line. And then we're not even having this conversation because of Malik Jackson, Andrew Billings, and Jordan Elliott don't matter. But I think if anything is going to hold them back on defense, I think teams can put points up on there. Their secondary was good last year. I think their secondary is improved with Troy Hill, John Johnson, and Greg Newsome, and hopefully a healthy, for them, hopefully. Healthy Grant Delpit, but I just think that front seven, there's a lot of things in there that I'm not sitting here saying, oh man, I gotta really worry about them. I think in terms of front seven goes, the Steelers have the best front seven in the AFC North, in my opinion. I think linebacker for the Browns is a question mark, and I think the interior D line is a question mark. Now I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, I'll obviously eat those words, but I think they have weak spots on their defense. I think their offense is about as watertight as it could get. Their defense leaves a lot to be desired in the front. Their back end's very good.
Yeah, and I was looking at the you're talking about points the Browns gave up just to the Ravens alone, 47-38. They gave up 85 points in 2 games to Baltimore.
Yep.
38 to the Cowboys. The Steelers. Now you want to talk about miserable offense, not against the. Well, I'm sorry. Actually, got the wild card game mixed in here too, but they were the next two, 38 and 37. The Steelers also scored 22 with Mason Rudolph under center and throwing some bombs. 35 from the Titans, 34 and 30 from the Bengals. So in pairs of games against their own division opponents, they're giving up 30 or better per game. And if it wasn't for Mason there,
who knows?
They might have given up 30 there as well. That needs to be fixed. They gave up 25 to the Jacksonville Jaguars in a game they nearly lost. They won by 2 points. There was a game where they held the New York Giants. They beat them 20-6 with Colt McCoy as the quarterback. There's a number of things like this where I don't like the criticism that had been thrown toward the Steelers for playing soft schedules, this, that, and the other thing. When you're looking at the Ravens, you're looking at the Browns, the Bengals, the Steelers, pretty much all playing the same kind of identical schedules. Steelers on paper have the most difficult schedule right now. That doesn't mean stick a fork in them. In fact, when they had a difficult schedule, that was 2008 with that no-name offense, undrafted running back, and they get to the Super Bowl, buddy. Yep. So if I had to answer this truthfully and say who's the biggest threat to the Steelers in the AFC North, it would be themselves, actually. But I guess that's kind of a cop-out. I have to pick one of these teams. And I'm struggling with this because I think definitely when you have Devin Bush on the field, we have Joe Hayden. I know Joe Hayden's a year older. They didn't have Bud Dupree. That really hurt, wild card wise. I think Bud Dupree with Alex Highsmith, that's something that you could kind of do this. But even Robert Spillane wasn't available toward the end of the year either, and he's kind of the backup inside linebacker there. Your defensive quarterback. He's your play caller there. Devin Bush is your play caller. And then they tried to have Spillane do it. And he said, remember? It was like, yeah, I've done it. And then he felt comfortable with him doing it. And then all of a sudden he's out too. And, those are the type of things that end up happening. And for those reasons, I still think that the Steelers could own the Browns. I think they could sweep them. You made the comments earlier about the Ravens. And I just seem to think, just historically, over the years, it's either a split or the Ravens end up they come into Heinz Field and they play underdog, they play spoiler and everything else. Even though if they're not truly an underdog, in most cases, the games are just they're slugfests. And I'm gonna say the way the schedule's set up, they do have Cleveland and they have Baltimore kind of back to back there at the end of the year, and that sucks. And they got to go to Baltimore. They got to go to Baltimore. They do have Cleveland at home. That's the last home game. So I got to give the edge based on the way the schedule's set up to the Ravens. And it's kind of a point where if the Steelers, unless they're sitting players in week, what will be 18 now, let's say they win a division, the game doesn't matter, and they could avoid stacking bodies the way these games end up getting played. Man, playing the Browns the week before that, they're going to limp into Baltimore, and it's going to be pretty ugly too. And then they're going to maybe limp into the playoffs. And I don't like the way that that's stacked up against the Steelers there. It's not my favorite. So if I have to pick one team, it's going to be the Ravens. Let me guess, Bengals.
Definitely the Bengals, especially after all the injuries happen. My gut tells me the Ravens. I want to say the Browns just because, again, on paper, I think they do have the best overall roster in the AFC North. And I like the structure they have there, and I think they are going to be a better team. I think they are going to be – I think all three of those teams can and will potentially be in the contention for, the AFC North crown. I just look overall, I think the Ravens offense and the Browns offense could both give the Steelers defense problems. That's no knock on the Steelers defense. But if Tyson Aluwala were to get banged up again, we saw how much of a wide open gaping hole that could be in the middle, and with the Ravens and Browns both loving the run down the throats of defenses the way that they do, even if Aluwala is healthy, I start to kind of think, is this going to be another run heavy where the Steelers are playing catch up? Now, when you flip the ball and you look at the defenses, how the Steelers match up with them, I think the Browns overall might have the best secondary of those two teams. I just trust what the Ravens do a lot more up front. You know, I have a gut and suspicion that they're going to figure out a way to get those guys to work. You know, I think Jason Owe is going to be a very good player. You know, not a Penn State guy, but I think he's going to be a very good player. I wouldn't be surprised if he's starting. And, you know, they have some good linebackers. I like Patrick Queen a lot. Malik Harrison hasn't been bad. You know, and I think that Derek Wolfe has not been bad. Brandon Williams is still a stud on the inside, and Calais Campbell can still get it done. You know, I think he's also on his last leg. He's kind of in that going by name category at this point, but he was effective last year. You know, and I just trust their front seven more, and because of that, I just get concerned. I think the Ravens match up better, and that's tough for me to say because I think you look at their offenses, even though they're talking about the run game. If you're going to ask me who I'd rather have on the line throwing the ball, Baker Mayfield or Lamar Jackson, I'm taking Baker Mayfield. You know, and that's no indication of where I think about his arm. That's just indication of what I think about Lamar Jackson's arm. You know, you're down 2 scores in the fourth quarter. You can't just be running the ball the entire time. You know, at some point you're going to have to throw. So it's tough. You know, this is a tough division. I know a lot of analysts want to go and sit there and say the Steelers have no shot in this race, but I still think they do. I still think they match up very well. And as we've seen in years and years and years, the AFC North is a very combative, very bloodthirsty, blood in the waters division. You know, and any three of these teams, it would not surprise me to be sitting there in January and saying they're the AFC North champion. But if I had to guess, you know, the Ravens are probably the biggest threat to unseat the Steelers. But it wouldn't surprise me if the Steelers finished third place behind those two teams. It wouldn't surprise me if the Steelers won the AFC North. You know, honestly, at this point as it stands, nothing surprises me in this division. The Bengals winning the AFC North would surprise me. But the other two teams, you know, I think the Ravens and the Browns both have the ability to go and do a lot of damage. I think all three teams have the ability to do damage in the AFC North and in the AFC in general. When you look at the AFC West, you know, just being kind of the cheese, maybe the Chargers take a step up. Who knows? I'm not really caring about the Raiders and the Broncos. And the AFC South is still a dumpster fire unless Carson Wentz somehow goes and, you know, reinvents his career. And I think the Titans take a step back. So really there's not a whole lot going there. You know, without Arthur Smith, who knows what Tannehill's going to do, and who knows if they're going to still try to feed the ball to Derrick Henry so much. So I really think that, you know, the Steelers are going to be in a position where the AFC North is going to be a very competitive division with the Bills and the Chiefs, because you have to assume they're still going to be the top two teams going into the year. So in my mind, if you had to, you know, force me to pick an answer, I'm probably going with the Ravens just based off of my gut. And again, that comes back to just the Browns. I need to see the Browns do it. I need to believe that they can go in there and not just get hot when it matters. I want to be able to see Baker Mayfield go and actually carry a team whenever he's forced to throw the ball when the game script goes away from Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I want to see him do that. And so I might change my answer down the road. Like, we have this conversation again here, week 3, week 4, maybe I change my answer. But just seeing what I've seen so far and what have you done for me lately, and I don't forget the past. I just trust the Ravens to figure it out. They're very well coached. Not that the Browns aren't. And if I had to pick one team, I'd go with the Ravens as well. But it's tough because I think all three of those teams have a shot in this race. And I don't think it's anyone who says the Steelers don't have a shot in this race and are just trying to be contrarian and just sit there and prop the Browns up saying they're going to go 18-0. I'm sorry, 17-0 or whatever. They're not.
The thing that does it for me is, and I know week 1 they play the Ravens. They only put up 6 points against them. Week 8 they only put up 6 points against the Raiders. You know, 7 against the Steelers. It totally thumped and embarrassed at Heinz Field. And I think that's what we were all expecting to happen again in that playoff game. And I still feel it's going to be a whole different dynamic this year, too. You talk about just kind of putting a bow on this whole episode, too. You're going to have maybe full training camps and things and better preparation because we're hopefully getting over the hump of the whole pandemic situation, a lot of the unknowns. But you're also going to have fans in the stands.
Yes.
So you're not going to hear people just calling things out. You're going to have to deal with crowd noise and all. I mean, it's a big factor. This isn't. It's not like other sports. There's home field advantage some in other sports. But I think the NFL, it's unlike anything else.
Different level.
Yeah, it's just the structure of football. You know, you got to go in a huddle, you got to call out plays, you got to do things on the line, the communication, and everything that's going on there. It's like I don't know. you got hand signals, and probably the only thing in baseball you need to hear is if the Astros are banging on a trash can. So anyways, Zach, hey man, we're in agreement here. Thanks for joining me once again. A little bit of a longer episode here, maybe than even what we cared to do, but again, we're kind of in this off-season period, so we were thinking maybe a little bit of bonus podcast here. We'll get one bigger one in for you to kind of whet your appetite, hump day in the middle of the week and everything like that. And then hopefully we get back to some doubles here. Mix Brian back into this thing. He's conspicuous by his absence. He hates when I say that. That's because he doesn't know what conspicuous means. And I might have to look that up too, see if I'm using it the right way. So, hey, thanks, man. Thanks for joining me once again. And we got to do it again sometime soon. Pleasure's
always mine.
All right. Same here, man. And everyone else that's listening, supporting, everything like that. We're only doing these like once a week too. It's like, I don't know about you. I feel like every now and then it's like you get in a fog. You're always like in a rhythm when you're firing them out like here and there. And then all of a sudden it's like, man, I got to get back into the routine. So if I'm stumbling and bumbling a little bit, I apologize. We always appreciate your support. And we're trying to get these things together, working around everyone's busy schedules and stuff too. All of us moving around, scurrying around like rats now. So we appreciate everyone that's out there. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also visit the website. We got some good stuff that comes up from a variety of contributors that you actually don't hear from here on the podcast. Most of us I kind of wear two hats. You used to write some, Brian used to write some, but we got some other great folks who come up with some stuff. It could be a little late, but every day we got something new for you there too at steelcityunderground.com. And I guess that's where we'll leave it. As we always say to close out our show, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.